Waters of the United States Rule and its effects on the construction industry.
The following analysis of the WOTUS rule discusses how the ambiguity of legislation during the 1970s led to a far too long period of controversy and unclarity pertaining to the mitigation of pollution in the United States waterways. This paper goes on to evaluate how the open-endedness of the Clean Water Act resulted in jurisdictional uncertainty and significant impacts to land development. The broad interpretation of the Clean Water Act of 1972 resulted in a nightmare when deciding jurisdictional scopes, pollution lawsuits, and landowner rights. As a result of this ineptitude of the Clean Water Act of 1972, WOTUS was born, although it came with problems of its own, which will be discussed further on in this paper.
The Clean Water Act, CWA, establishes the basic structure for regulating discharges of pollutants into the waters of the United States and regulating quality standards for surface waters. The basis of the CWA was enacted in 1948 and was called the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, but the act was significantly reorganized and expanded in 1972. Clean Water Act became the act's most common name with amendments in 1972. Under the CWA, EPA has implemented pollution control programs such as setting wastewater standards for its industry. EPA has also developed national water quality criteria recommendations for pollutants in surface waters. The CWA made it unlawful to discharge any pollutant from a point source into navigable waters unless a permit was obtained. The CWA made it unlawful to discharge any pollutant from a point source into navigable waters unless a permit was obtained. The EPA works with its federal, state, and tribal regulatory partners through a comprehensive Clean Water Act compliance monitoring program to protect human health and the environment by ensuring that the regulated community obeys environmental laws and regulations through on-site visits by qualified inspectors, and a review of the information is to be submitted for documentation.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers released the Waters of the United States Rule in 2015 to clarify the complicated process required for determining federal jurisdiction in regard to U.S. water systems. Floridian attorney Rachel Santana describes the changes made in the WOTUS rule in saying, "Regulatory agencies are afforded substantial deference in making jurisdictional determinations, and the multi-factor analysis for what constitutes a significant nexus is very broad, heightening fears of federal jurisdictional grab of previously unregulated areas. This is one area of the final rule that has strong implications for regulated community." In other words, this increases the power of federal jurisdiction on U.S. waters, which can cause serious threats to the economy. Legal fees, permitting rates, and other economic development inhibitors associated with the lack of local and state sovereignty negatively impact residential, commercial, agricultural, and construction markets, which provide most middle-class jobs in the nation and are the heart of America.
To connect the Waters of the United States Rule to the construction industry, it's important to consider the miscellaneous costs and obstacles that contractors already have to contend with throughout their projects. The Waters of the United States Rule, in a nutshell, still left room for some interpretation, but the circular language in the rule did not do much to uncomplicate the regulations, but it did help some. The site development considerations became even more significant, and contractors now had to put more front-end work in the beginning of projects to make sure that their projects were in compliance with agency regulations and standards such as DHEC and the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. Now, in estimating processes and bidding considerations and even scheduling, contractors had to consider how much time they were going to put forth installing silt fences, construction entrances, and maintaining those stormwater prevention methods throughout the project. there were considerable site development considerations too that are still in place with the Waters of the United States rule. Rutherford Platt listed a few of the other considerations and obstacles that are involved in the development process. He states, in agricultural areas, the soil quality, topography, and availability of water are paramount determinants of how the land will be used. And in urban locations, site development encloses the physical space above and below the parcel service area. All these activities are subject to public zoning laws and other restrictions regulating many aspects of private land use, such as site excavation, building height, and a minimum residential lot size. Thus, these zoning ordinances and considerations can affect the property value of certain land parcels and must be considered in the feasibility of certain projects going forward.